Hi, hope you enjoyed California Handgunner as much as I did. Coming soon is our companion piece, California Rifleman, chock full of my extensive collection of riot guns, sniper rifles, assault rifles, hunting rifles of all kinds. I'm sure there's something in there for everyone. Check it out.
Yo, if you like California Handgunner, stick around for California Rifleman.
Hi, and welcome to California Handgunner magazine. My name is Bruce Walker, and for the next few days, my partner Roger White and I are going to be taking you to Orange County in Southern California, where we'll explore some of the more exciting aspects of the world of handgunning. Our first stop is the South Coast Gun Club in Santa Ana, certainly one of the best and most modern facilities for pistol shooting that Southern California has to offer. Most of the members and guests that we'll meet here today find pistol shooting to be an exciting as well as an involving sort of hobby, but one that they're willing to share with people that aren't initiates into the world of guns. We'll talk to some of these folks here about the pistols they're shooting and maybe find out a little bit about how they got into the sport of pistol shooting in the first place.
Our purpose in this tape is to give you an overview of the wide range of possibilities handgun shooting offers. For this reason, we've decided not to employ the standard buzzwords used by print magazines in order to express their familiarity with the business of gun manufacturing. Very often, in that media, the content is given over primarily to charts and statistics whose purpose remains cryptic to all but the most experienced ballistics experts and handgun engineers. Our aim is to show you as many of the various sides of handgun shooting and collecting as we can in the following 60 minutes. If you, the viewer, wish to pursue any further information regarding any one gun or any particular sport, you'll find a list of publications at the end of this tape that will help serve as a guide to answer those questions.
Okay, shooters, listen up. Load all big bore rifles, 1 round at a time. Load all 22 rimfire rifles and all pistols, no more than 5. Shoot only at your assigned paper target. Do not shoot at rocks, animals, or equipment in the target area. All fire slow fire. There is no rapid firing. All fire at the animal silhouettes is by permission of range house only. Target area is clear. You may step up and fire. You have 25 minutes until the next target break.
I'm really interested in how you started collecting handguns. What inspired you to buy your first one?
Well, you know, I used to be a commercial diver, and I was out on a rig laying, 7 or 8 miles of pipeline. And most of the guys I worked with are, shooters or into going bear hunting or one damn thing or another. And I actually started off with just a little black powder kit that I just sort of goofed around on, and I guess it's sort of like getting bit by the bug, if it's gold or if it's ladies or, horses or whatever. And, I started off with 1, and now I've got about 60.
Okay, shooters, listen up. During a target break, no one's to handle any weapons for any reason, no matter if you're leaving or coming on the range. Cased or uncased, you do not touch a gun during the break. Anyone leaving on the 50 and a pistol line, return all cardboard back to the booth. If you're not going forward and when you return back from the target area, you must stay back behind the red line away from the benches. Okay, shooters on the 50 and a pistol line only, you may go forward now and pull or post your target.
While these guys are changing their targets, I wanted to ask you quickly about the guns we've been using this morning, in sort of a sequence, which ones we were firing. You had the
44 mag.
And tell me a little something about it.
It's a Ruger 44 Magnum. It's a follow-up after the Red Hawk. It's the Super Black Hawk.
And this is the modern Ruger. This is
This is the one, from what I understand, in commemoration to Sturm Ruger. When he died, they renamed it the Black Hawk, from originally the Red Hawk.
And what's a gun like this cost?
Today on the market, the single-action 44 mag will go about $350.
And what were the ones you were firing?
Primarily automatics. I also had a Smith & Wesson 44 Magnum, but it's a double action piece. And again, it's the most powerful handgun commercially available to most people out there. The rest of them are semi-automatic pistols that have various magazine capacities in terms of firepower, the number of rounds available. Most of them are designed for the small, compact models are designed for home protection, ladies, personal use like that. You go from a 9mm Parabellum cartridge down to a 9mm Kurz, or a short, a 380 short, which is a 9mm but reduced in power. Most of these automatics, with the exception of maybe the Beretta 9mm, aren't very accurate out to the kind of distances we're shooting at. With his Magnum, he can shoot in all kinds of holes through my action. But the advantage that the automatics have is magazine capacity. You have 5-6 rounds in a revolver. In automatics, with the Beretta, they're up to 15 rounds with one in the chamber. So you get 16 tries to do what you got to do.
So if you can't hit something at 15 tries or 6 tries, you better back it up.
Right. You need to be in a different line of business if that's your business.
Okay.
But,
I wanted to ask you some questions about the guns you and your son were firing. I noticed the small one is a 22 rimfire of some sort. Is that your gun?
That's a Ruger Bearcat. It was first made in 1958, and it was made with children in mind. It's a very small little pistol. It's single action, and it's pretty safe. double-action pistols can get you in a little more trouble. This guy's, you have to cock it and then shoot it. It's a real nice gun for little kids. Ruger doesn't make it anymore. The reason it was called a Bearcat is because on the cylinder there's a engraving of a bear.
I wanted to ask you about was that big one there. It's called a Contender?
Yes, that's a Thompson Center Contender. It has an SSK barrel on it and a caliber 300 Savage. I use it for silhouette shooting, unlimited standing. It's capable of very precise groups. In silhouette shooting, that's real important because the closest target is 50 meters away. The longest target is 200 meters.
Tell me how you got interested in shooting, how that came about.
Well, I grew up on a cattle ranch. My father was a cowboy, and we always had guns and stuff around the house, so as long as I can remember, I had a pistol or a rifle around. And it's a good sport and one that requires a great deal of concentration. It gives you appreciation for mechanics, and it's something that teaches you respect for the environment, respect for other people, and just how serious pistols and gun shooting are, because when you make a mistake, it's real hard to reverse.
Yeah.
You know, Roger, one of the most fascinating aspects I found about shooting is the collecting and study of historical firearms. The ways in which the technological advance of weaponry changed our view of the world is an interesting sidelight to history. For instance, before the dueling pistol was initiated into the idea of trial by combat, the merest flick of a sword, a dueling scar, was proof enough to the victor that satisfaction had indeed been achieved.
Whereas the 50 caliber ball that a flintlock dueling pistol was able to fire at an opponent usually meant a painful amputation or death by infection if the loser wasn't lucky enough to be killed outright. It was this fact that killed the practice of dueling, not the law, which had in fact banned dueling in most civilized countries by the late 1600s. Today's modern gun shop will usually carry a wide selection of various types of firearms, from black powder guns to modern magnums. Developments in the handgun throughout history have influenced not only the outcome of battles, but in the case of the Civil War, the ability to produce such weaponry in large quantities became the determining factor upon which the outcome of an entire war rested.
We have a segment from one of our local cable shows with Roger displaying his collection. Now, even though these guns are all taken from different points in history, they're known in general shooter's language by the kind of powder they use, that is, black powder guns. The difference is, with the modern smokeless powder, well, maybe I should let Roger explain.
Hello, my name's Roger White. I'm down from Berkeley, California to present my collection, my somewhat limited collection of firearms dating back from 1776 all the way up here to 1985. The concept that we have behind most of these pistols, and they're all pistols, is I guess the development and history of these things over a period of time. The flintlock is the oldest that we have here, and the most difficult to deal with in terms of loading and firing. Next move up was the cap and ball, which replaced the flint and the striker pan. This is an example of a cap and ball weapon that's it's a pistol, although it has a detachable shoulder stock so that it can be utilized either fashion. And as you can see, it has a nipple underneath each hammer, which would receive a cap. The practice of firepower has been a problem through the ages, and it was best solved with the revolver. The revolvers being anything from this Colt Walker, which has the reputation of even today being the most powerful handgun ever produced. And this was manufactured in 1847. So even so, you can see that it's quite large, and the average person would have a hard time feeling comfortable handling a weapon like this. These were all primarily military in nature. The same concept of the revolver was picked up with the pepper box, which is a multi-barreled unit. I don't know if you can see, but there's 6 shots here, and it had the advantage over the double barrel or the side-by-sides of increased firepower, which has been the main pursuit in the firearms industry for a number of years, and still up to this day and age. Most of these weapons here, they're all black powder. In other words, they burn black powder only, not smokeless or nitro powder. They're designed to basically have recreation as their function, although all of these weapons are lethal and need to be treated and handled with as much care as any other firearm. This little curiosity with the 3 barrels was pretty standard issue in American shipping throughout the age of sail before steam came into play, and primarily it was issued to officers and mates to maintain order in a crowd. I guess the original riot gun would be about the closest thing you could call it. The other pieces here represent essentially various developments in style and design. The actual mechanical functioning is essentially the same for all of these. There's the loading is a little bit different, but essentially the powder is poured in through a flask, which has a pre-measured nipple. The powder's poured in, the ball's inserted on top, rammed home, the cap is inserted, and the weapon's fired. This process is extremely slow, considering that the American Indian in his bow and arrow could probably let loose about 20 shots for every shot that the guys in the Wild West were able to send off. And the concept of the revolver firing continuously is really quite amazing. This long barrel revolver is also set up for a shoulder stock to function as a carbine. Might only fire 12 or 18 times before so much powder fouling would develop that it would be essentially useless. You couldn't function the action. It would be stuck. The only development in the last 100 years with any of these that's really been significant has been smokeless powder and the cartridge. And the cartridge has replaced the need for the powder flask, for single cartridges, single balls, as well as cappers and molds and all the accoutrements that you see in some of these cases that were necessary to keep a firearm functioning. Also, the black powder is the most corrosive of propellants, and therefore the ability to maintain any of these in mint condition was almost next to impossible because of rust and exposure to the weather and elements like that. I don't know what, in terms of history, most of these small, oddball-looking pieces were primarily carried by riverboat gamblers. These things were usually carried in a waistcoat or in the pants, in a boot, and their accuracy was very limited. They also had a problem with the powder in the shot not always firing, so many weapons were developed with built-in knives, daggers, brass knuckles, assorted accessories like that. the ladies of the time generally carried something of this nature, which is well, it's a double side-by-side double-barrel snake eyes, and possibly a very small revolver, much like this one down here on the table. Other than that, it's a military development over the years in revolvers and single-shot weapons, and well, I guess the largest being this guy here. It would seem that this is a rifle, which in fact it is, but as soon as the stock is removed, it becomes a .58 caliber pistol or handgun. It's essentially a musket, a Zouave musket that was used during the American Civil War, and they've chopped it down into a more or less manageable handgun size. This is very difficult to shoot with any amount of accuracy. It requires someone who's possibly a bodybuilder or a weightlifter to really control one with any degree of success. By and large, I think the development of these weapons and the availability in the marketplace is desirable because people can get an appreciation for firearms in a rather safe fashion. None of these are easily loaded. None of them can be easily fiddled with by a child in terms of an accidental shooting in the household. There are just too many steps to go through to have that kind of trouble. The overall development of black powder, I guess, has taken a back seat to the modern firearms, but they still have matches and meets for muzzle loaders and people that want to reenact mountain men rendezvous, and they'll dress up in buckskins and coonskin caps and do the whole 9 yards.
Well, I really enjoy displaying this collection of black powder pistols. Like most people, I really enjoy shooting them more. The loading procedure for a black powder cap and ball revolver is essentially the same for all the various models of revolvers on the market. First, the powder flask is employed to load each cylinder in turn. Most revolvers have either 5 or 6 cylinders. We load the chamber, like so, with the flask. We then take a round shot, a round ball, set it in place it over the loading lever. The loading lever is then forced home, seating the ball. It slices a little ring of lead right off of the circumference of the ball, at which point, in turn, each cylinder receives a percussion cap. This cap is seated over the nipple, and once in place, all 6 chambers are loaded, capped, and then ready to fire. Okay, in contrast, the flintlock pistol is loaded somewhat differently. The main difference being the source of ignition to the main charge of powder. The flintlock, as its name implies, utilizes a hammer with the striker or the flint actually clamped in place. This then hits the striker and flashes the pan, the powder in the pan, which is loaded like so. Locked down into place. The weapon can either be let down on the half cock or it can be loaded directly. Ball's inserted on the top, and most of the time there's a built-in ramrod for ramming it home. Once the ball is seated, the weapon is then cocked and fired. We're here with a selection of different caliber black powder pistols, ranging from 20 caliber black powder pepper box pistol to 44 caliber side-by-side double barrel, cap and ball revolvers in 44 caliber. We have a single fire cap and ball muzzle loading pistol that's in 58 caliber, a 69 caliber flintlock pistol, and the original Colt revolver patented in this country back in 1835, 1837 is the Colt Patterson. The story of the modern handgun begins with the single-action revolver, which employs the same fixed barrel or tube and firing mechanisms as in more primitive models, like this 1860 Army, manufactured by Colt during the American Civil War, which employs 44 caliber round ball and percussion caps. The revolver bears a cylinder that, by turning, carries loaded cartridges into alignment with the firing mechanism at the rear of the barrel. Pistols of this type usually contain 5 or 6 chambers that rotate around an axis. The revolver, when cocked, is brought into alignment with the barrel. In a single-action pistol, the shooter pulls back the hammer by hand. This, as you can see, is basically a very simple method. He then has only to pull the trigger. The idea of the revolver actually dates back to the 1500s. But it wasn't until 1835 when an American inventor named Samuel Colt developed the first revolver that was both rugged enough and reliable enough for long, hard use to put into full production. This pistol, known as the Colt Patterson model, was the first production revolver manufactured in the United States. Okay, the double action method refers to the firing of the pistol simply by pulling the trigger. This cocks the weapon and fires it at the same time as you pull the trigger, as demonstrated with this Colt Python model. The next major development in handgun technology is the automatic pistol, which took place around 1897. Automatic refers to the loading method, which is why they're often referred to as auto-loaders. Fundamentally, all auto-loading pistols function on the same principle known as blowback. Some of the expanding gas that's created when the cartridge discharges its bullet is channeled back towards the rear of the gun, which drives a slide backward, and that, in turn, pushes back the spent cartridge and ejects it from the gun. This same method recocks the trigger mechanism, pushing the slide all the way back until it is acted upon by a strong spring, which pulls the slide back into its original position. As it returns to its original locking position, it pulls with it a fresh cartridge, bringing it into firing position. John Browning created this method just before the turn of the century. Usually, it is known as the direct blowback process, inasmuch as the force of the bullet being discharged blows the bolt or the slide directly against the recoil spring. However, when large caliber ammunition, such like in the Beretta 9mm or the Colt 45 automatic is utilized, the charge is so powerful that a bleed-off method had to be devised in order to handle it. John Browning accomplished this by creating the delayed blowback method. The slow-motion firing of the Browning 380 automatic pistol serves as a good demonstration of the principles we've just discussed.
We're here in the desert to show you the differences in penetrating power of various calibers on an ordinary Orange County phone book. We're going to run through a whole range of bullets: 22, 25, 32 caliber, 38 special, 380, 357 Magnum, 44 Magnum, and finally a big 69 caliber round ball flintlock pistol. Here we have the very visible results of our little impromptu penetration test. The 22 caliber went about halfway through this phone book. The 38, about 2/3 of the way through the book. The 357 and the 44 Magnums both managed to penetrate the phone book as well as the book behind it. Whereas the 69 caliber black powder flintlock, that's this hole here, went through 2 entire phone books and the wooden backing board, plus managed to go into the dirt behind that. So you can see some of these old black powder loads are even more powerful than the handguns we have today. Many shooters have little interest in penetrating power, however. Their only concern is accuracy. Here at the range, one of the newest and certainly most enjoyable forms of handgunning is steel silhouette shooting. Distances of 50, 100, 150 and 200 yards have been designated by the NRA for this purpose. Steel silhouette targets of chickens, pigs, turkeys, and rams are arranged in banks of 5. Each shooter has 2.5 minutes per bank and must shoot his targets from left to right in that order. There are 4 different kinds of silhouette shooting, each employing a distinct and different kind of gun. Conventional freestyle is for guns with iron sights, which aren't bolt action. The guns preferred by shooters in this category are guns like the Smith & Wesson Model 29 and the Ruger new model Super Blackhawk. Unlimited freestyle involves pistols that can be as long as 15 inches. Guns like the TCU Contender and the Wichita Mark 40 are popular for this event. In the conventional standing section, guns must be the same dimensions as conventional freestyle, except they have to be capable of firing 5 shots without reloading. That takes pistols like the big Magnum revolvers, Colt Pythons, Dan Wessons, and the various kinds of auto mags. Unlimited freestyle must be under 15 inches and can employ any kind of action, as well as scopes or optical electronic sights. Long-barreled bolt actions in the Remington XP100 style are most popular in the unlimited freestyle category. The object of this kind of fun is pretty obvious. All you have to do is hit a target made of steel hard enough to knock it over. The key word here being hit. At these distances, it's not all that easy, as you might have guessed.
I wanted to talk to you because I saw you out there shooting about 10 out of 10 with that thing. What is that gun you're shooting?
It's a 44 Smith & Wesson for silhouette shooting, special.
And what makes it different for silhouette shooting?
It's got a special 4-position ramp front sight. The 44 caliber, has quite a bit of bullet drop at the several ranges, the 4 different ranges. So the ramp position allows me to sight perfectly each time with a consistent level. Now, some of the shooters shooting the larger caliber cartridges, which are getting into rifle range, they have a flatter shooting bullet and they only need 1 sight position. And I bought that gun because I can hit almost anything I want to with it.
Obviously. I watched you standing up there with just a normal stance shooting that thing, and that's at, what, about 100 yards?
Well,
and then you were...
Yeah.
And then the next one, the bore, how far away is that?
No, this is 50 meter, and the bore is 100 meter.
Oh, okay, 100 meters.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And then you go to 150 turkeys and 200 meter ram.
So how do you get to be that good?
A hell of a lot of practice.
A lot of practice.
A lot of practice.
While many of us aspire to be marksmen, everyone should start out the same way, with a qualified instructor. Here at the South Coast Gun Club, the classroom's just a short walk from the range.
Your name is?
Brian O'Connell.
And what's your job here, Brian?
Well, I have a multifold job. In this particular classroom, I'm a conservation and safety instructor for the State of California Department of Fish and Game, represented through this South Coast Gun Club. We have been teaching hunter safety here for 30 years this year. I've been teaching it, I believe, for 17 in California, another probably 10 in New York State. New York State was the first state to have mandatory hunter safety. That was in 1948.
I know it's a lot to ask, Brian, but can you maybe condense what you talk about in the course down to a few minutes for us?
There's very specifics that are required, such as hunter responsibility. That may include hunter ethics, principles of wildlife management. You have arms and archery, which will cover things as early firearms, black powder, shotguns, handguns, rifles. It can be descriptions, nomenclature, ammunitions, ballistics. You can go on and on and on with it. As I say, and it covers everything: survival, first aid, game care. Now, all of it is designed, we can tailor it to the needs of the class, which means the class, as I say, by law, legal hunting license can be obtained from 12 years old up.
Oh, really?
So, and required if you're going to.
Yeah.
So obviously, when people hunt, they hunt with rifles, they hunt with shotguns, bows and arrows, crossbows, handguns. So you kind of feel a class out. And you're trying, it has to be geared for everybody, regardless of age, sex, nationality. This doesn't count. It's also a federally sanctioned class, and then there is federal tax sharing dollars. All hunting, by the way, all conservation is paid for by hunters and sportsmen, period. There are no other motives.
That's through the NRA? Or
No, it's through what was called, I believe, Pittman-Robertson Act, which means every time you buy sporting goods equipment, your ammunition, your rifles, your pistols, there's a percentage of that tax money that is accumulated for conservation. And the management of conservation and hunting is from this tax dollars. So the only people who support your hunting and fishing are your huntermen and fishermen. Here at South Coast Gun Club, which is a non-profit public range that sponsors this course for hunter safety. It's been around for 30 years out here. As I say, many students, but the club is not limited to that. It's open public range. You can fire a rifle, pistol, shotgun, black powder, trap, skeet, big bore up to 200 meters. It's an outdoor range. It's the last one left in Orange County. Okay, very reasonable prices. It's currently $8 a day to shoot rifle or pistol. I don't think you can beat that anywhere. They have other safety programs. You have a junior program. We have override a silhouette shooting, teams. We have a public course open now that minimal cost for anybody, where they can learn the basics of safe handling of rifle, pistol, shotgun. We don't go down to one course. We teach all three in one course, so the person has a choice. If they've never shot a rifle in their life or a shotgun or a handgun, they will. We supply the ammunition, we supply the handguns, and it's generally just basic firearm safety, nomenclature, cleaning, storing, transporting in your car. We will do everything possible at the club for any member that comes out. They can come out and join the club, they can not join the club. There are people here constantly who will help in any endeavor. Old guns, bring them out. We probably have more experts working on the guns out here than you can find condensed in any place in probably Southern California. So we cover every aspect of shooting. And most of us are very club-oriented, very sportsmanship-oriented, so anybody can come out here and ask. The only dumb question out here is the one you don't ask.
I've seen a lot of fathers and sons out here, and perhaps even some daughters. How young does someone start shooting? And mothers, yes. How young does someone start shooting?
Well, there's two views. Again, as I say, it's a public range. So we encourage family membership, family participation. There's no specific rules or laws there. If I was to put it into state of California interpretation for hunting, a 12-year-old can hunt legally with a hunting license. Okay? If you look at reading comprehension, these tests that we give for the state for hunter safety is designed and reading comprehension. If they can pass it with good instruction, it's legal. We don't allow on the range anyone under 18 years of old. As fire on this range without being in the accompaniment of an adult. So we ensure this safety, we ensure this thing. They can get whatever instruction that particular person is capable of teaching, which can run the whole gauntlet, or we have junior membership that they can take, or they take some of our more specialized courses. We do not allow junior membership without taking a hunter safety course.
When you come to the end of your class, what do you have to say finally to them all?
Thank God it's over. Probably the greatest fallacy of people taking classes is that you get to, it's like driving. You can put it into driving. You've been driving for 27 years or 30 years or 15 years, and all of a sudden you feel that you have nothing left to learn. See? And then amazingly, every time somebody gets cited, they found that they were wrong.
Right.
See? And this very simply equates to anything else. You can't learn enough in your lifetime. You have to keep doing it. You can't come from someplace. California, I thought for a long time that the whole country was tilted towards the southwest and all the loose stuff rolled in. Okay? So we find that isn't really true.
Yeah.
But where are these people coming from? You're coming from countries that may have no game laws. Mm-hmm. You can do whatever you want. You're coming from states, that have different survival situations, different handgun laws, different rifle laws, different bow and arrow laws. But you're not there, you're here. So you have to learn what's here. So no matter where you came, unless you've done it, and unless you've memorized that book, and that's trying to memorize the penal code, you're not going to do it. You just can't do it. So you have to put it into an instruction, into common sense. And the key is common sense. Nothing can make us have it, but we can try and do something to make it stand out a little bit. Or we're our own wardens. If we want to have the guns, use the guns, have hunting, use it, we have to police ourselves. So we have to educate ourselves and we have to police ourselves.
Thank you very much, Brian.
Okay.
Safety should be of utmost concern in the responsible shooter's mind. Brian just gave us a quick review of his gun safety program, but the fact remains that many people depend on handguns for protection, and protection means stopping power. I was with Roger the other day in the Ortegas for a demonstration.
What's this new gun you got here?
Well, this is a Ruger Red Hawk. It's stainless steel, and it's also got a scope, but it's a shorter barrel, and it's double action. You see the cylinder swings out on this to take a speed load of 6 rounds of 44 Magnum, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to load up and shoot up.
Tell these people how a speed loader works.
The speed loader contains 6 rounds that load simultaneously at one time. These are simply inserted into the cylinder and pressed, and all 6 are loaded at once, as opposed to the single action method of opening the back of the chamber and loading them 1 round at a time into the cylinder. So with this, we're going to shoot some bottles, and we'll see the difference between this 44 Magnum and this 357.
Jack Benny was the biggest thing in radio in 1935. Clark Gable starred in Mutiny on the Bounty, and the Detroit Tigers beat the Chicago White Sox to win the World Series that year. Smith & Wesson introduced the 357 Magnum then. Of course, it took a few years for the 357 to catch on, about 40 to be exact. It wasn't until the mid-70s that burglary reports began to reflect a curious fact. The numbers said that most American handgun owners had taken Magnum load weapons to their hearts, not to mention their closets, bureaus, and desk drawers. Today's handgunners have been known to consider anyone without a Magnum to be a dilettante, or at least someone whose serious intent was in question. But in the old days, it was something known only to a few hunters and law enforcement officers. It's not to say that earlier handguns had no stopping power. The .38 Special was and still is considered sufficient by most law enforcement personnel. Some earlier examples, like the Walker Colt, are extremely impressive. Even today, they're considered the most powerful pistols ever constructed. But it's only within the last dozen years that Magnum handguns have really come into their own. Nowadays, as you'll see, everyone from kids to white-haired old men go to the range with enough stopping power to shoot through a Buick. There's no doubt that the movie Dirty Harry, released in 1971, had no little effect on the average gun owner. The .44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun ever made, suddenly caused the common man's .25 or .38 or even .45 to look like a piece of dime store goods compared to the ultimate icon of macho supremacy. Whatever its qualities as a weapon, and they are as many as its fans are legion, the Magnum handgun has entered the American mythology, right next to John Wayne, Marilyn Monroe, and apple pie. Now, it's a well-known fact that a gun is a gun is a gun, and even the cheapest Saturday night special can kill you. But what it can't do is punch holes in a target with the force of a railroad train, hit something at a distance so far away you need a telescope to see it, or knock down a steel pig silhouette at distances heretofore reserved only for rifles.
Gun writers manage to fill hundreds of pages and hundreds of magazines every year discussing two main topics: what's the best gun and what's the newest gun. The best gun, of course, depends on the purpose for which it is intended and the needs and qualifications of the particular shooter. In other words, the answer to that question is entirely dependent on who is doing the asking. A police officer, a target shooter, a hunter, and a household all have different requirements, even though all those descriptions may be the same person. The cop will not use his sidearm for hunting, just as the target shooter would not find a 10-inch Ruger Blackhawk much of a convenience in the bedside table. This is the reason they have clerks in gun stores. The second question, what's the newest gun, has a different answer every month. The first thing I noticed in reviewing my collection of gun magazines is that there's always new guns to talk about, just like there's always new cars, new shoe styles, and new hats. The basic idea of exploding gunpowder hurling a lead projectile through an open-ended tube is hardly novel. It has remained the same, actually, for hundreds of years. Guns are always subject, on a regular basis, to variations of science, technology, and style. However, once we got the revolver worked out, in the late 1800s, the only significant change has been the creation of the autoloader, which fulfills what is essentially the same function, only faster. The autoloader is really a machine to cycle the firing and get the brass out of the way as fast as possible. Interesting and advanced as that concept is, it still hasn't superseded the old-style revolver, and for special purposes like target shooting, neither has the revolver superseded its predecessor, the single-shot pistol. Better and harder materials are constantly being introduced. Chrome and alloy metals, custom grips, multi-position sights, electronic and optical scopes, magnum loads, they all boil down to the same thing: gilding on the lily.
If you're a woman living alone or just out alone at night, you want a piece you can slip into your purse. Something that's light, simple, easy to clean, easy to fire, yet not so easy that it goes off accidentally while you're looking for your keys and shoots a hole in the side of your Toyota. Now, there are lots of guns that fit this description, both cheap and reliable. There are lots more guns that are even cheaper and less reliable, so you should consult someone who has practical experience in handguns before making such a decision. Now, don't ask your father or your boyfriend unless he happens to be such a person. You know, Roger, most men have little direct experience with weapons, and yet by virtue of a couple of teaspoons of testosterone, they feel they should be a wellspring of combat knowledge. Well, a quick perusal of Guns and Ammo in the 7-Eleven and a review of all the latest Charles Bronson movies does not make you an expert on the care and loading of a weapon powerful enough to blow your arm off.
You got that right. Just as this tape is not an instruction manual on pistol shooting, and shouldn't be taken that way, only an expert like Brian Collins or an NRA course can teach you how to shoot. You can usually find a qualified NRA instructor at your local shooting range. Lists are available from the National Rifle Association for just this purpose. What we've intended is to show you the many different kinds of handguns and some of the many ways people enjoy them. Our intention, as well, has been to caution you. These things aren't just heavy, shiny toys. Massive, abrupt blood loss can be a direct result of not appreciating the inherent lethal capability of these weapons. Even championship shooters have been injured while downrange changing targets.
You know, when I first heard the range master give his instructions for firing, he seemed very strict indeed, especially for somebody who was addressing a group of adults. But later, when I started talking to him, I realized that his manner, which I thought originally was gruff and condescending, was actually a very real expression of the care and concern he had for the people that were his responsibility. He left us with a real good idea of the potential risk that was inherent in any activity of this kind. Just like skydiving or mountain climbing, concentration is essential to this kind of activity, and caution is a word you should hear every day.
So, handgunners, keep your powder dry and your hands steady, and your eye out for the next speed loader production.